Hi there. I'm Maggie Kelly, and I am wanted to just share some insights, a little Dharma talk today, mainly about in Buddhist traditions what they call the fourth mindfulness training. But for us, really, to summarize, it's about compassionate listening and loving speech because they go hand in hand, right? It may even go without saying that we can actually find freedom once we find compassionate listening, or we can find compassion for someone else. Now, how? If you think about it, if we get hooked or worked up by something someone says or does to us, our defenses automatically get triggered. And in an instant, one of our habitual patterns of behavior will naturally surface, most of the time without us being even aware of it. And without some kind of a spiritual practice or an acute awareness, where we train ourselves to notice when we get triggered, and instead, when we do get triggered, we choose a different reaction, it's pretty likely that that habitual pattern or those habitual patterns will continue unabated, right? Because you can't change what you don't notice, right? So instead, if you have a regular practice of noticing your own behaviors and catching yourself in the circumstances that trigger them, it's then that you have a much better chance of catching yourself in that moment of being triggered and instead choose differently, right? So if we consider that the thoughts that leave our mind, they leave our mind in the form of speech. So if you have a practice of settling your thoughts through meditation or mindfulness on a regular basis, it's more likely that you'll be aware of what you're saying and whether or not it's useful or whether what you're saying is creating a problem. So where does compassion come in? Well, partly compassion comes into play when we recognize the triggers in ourselves and we acknowledge them honestly for what they are. In other words, having compassion for ourselves and being open to looking at the causes of what has us triggered. The other part is our ability to recognize that whatever someone else has said or done is not likely a result of something personal to us. Typically, when people lash out, it's because they have some kind of unfinished business or some unrecognized anger that's brewing inside of them. In most cases, we triggered it without even knowing it, but it doesn't have anything to do with us. So enter compassion. Compassionate listening, more to the point, really. When someone listens to us with compassion, it can bring about healing and relief in an instant. This is what the Buddhist teaching in the Lotus Sutra remind us, that we have to learn to practice compassionate listening to help heal the people that we love and any other people we come in contact with, and help restore communication. And you don't need me to tell you that now more than ever, restoring communication is a very urgent task. Many of us have lost the capacity for listening, and it might even feel like today's divisive political climate that no one's able or capable of listening to anyone else. And without deep and compassionate listening, we feel alone. So there's two ways to approach this. One is having compassion for yourself and that automatic defensive reaction that's habitual to whatever someone says or does. It just triggers you or triggers a memory. Instead of allowing yourself to fall into the trap of your habitual patterns of reacting or responding, see if you can catch yourself and just stop and breathe. Don't allow yourself to engage in that habitual pattern. See if you can stop yourself in that very instant before you do engage. That's a practice, right? It's a tough practice too. The other idea is to have compassion also for that other person, because that person is clearly suffering from some unfinished internal business of their own. So you have to practice in such a way that anytime irritation and anger arise, that you can catch yourself in the moment and breathe in and out, while at the same time holding compassion for them in yourself. So in other words, catching yourself as you feel like you're going to get triggered. Don't allow yourself to be triggered and still maintain compassion. It's a tall order, really. Train yourself to be a compassionate listener and to use loving speech. And that's the fourth mindfulness training in Buddhist teachings. We seem really to have lost our capacity for speaking with kindness. And yet, it really is the most crucial aspect of being able to restore peace and peaceful, loving relationships, right? So if we're able to find compassion both for ourselves and for the other, there's really no need to put up our dukes. No need to argue or fight or, stand strong for your position. The trick really is to catch yourself in the arising moment of difficulty. That split second where you go from hearing what someone says and your reaction to it. That split second. That is the practice. And it's certainly easier said than done. That's where meditation and mindfulness can come into play. We need to train ourselves to notice that split second right then and there. It's a practice literally of beginning to unravel your old habitual patterns of behavior and replace them with a practice of new ones, right? And meditation is a wonderful way to practice your way to freedom, or in Buddhist teachings, they call liberation, right? The kind of freedom, peace, and stillness that come from or lead to joy, right? Because if you're not arguing and fighting and trying to get your position across, then your communication will be calmer and more settled and in less of a battle, right? And you will be free, you will be liberated just by the simple use of compassionate listening and loving speech. So it's not just the peace and the joy that comes from, not arguing. It's also the peace, the internal peace that you take away from not always being on the defensive. So if you don't currently have a meditation practice, I invite you to join me for my weekly beginners course on Wednesday evenings, 6:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific time via Zoom on Wednesday evenings. And if you can't make that time, I also offer a private meditation instruction, and I'll be happy to guide you and support you in your meditation practice. So let me help support you on your path to compassionate living, listening and living, and loving speech. So click below and join us for meditation, and let's all get on the path towards kind speech, compassion, and communication restored. The world needs us all. So thank you so much and have a beautiful day. Please don't hesitate to comment or subscribe, and there'll be another Dharma talk coming up soon. Thank you. I'm Maggie. Have a beautiful day.